Welcome to Raging Bullets, Pop Culture and Whatnot, episode 387. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the man of 1,000 personalities. So says the sensei of the Whatnot Segulin and the Duke of You-Know.
How's it going, brother?
And that's really kind of a reference to something we talk about on this episode, your fantasy wrestling league days. On this episode, if you haven't joined us for one of these before, we occasionally do these pop culture and whatnot shows where it's just a sidestep from our normal programming to talk about something else that we're fans about, we geek out about. It's not in place of our normal show, it's in addition to our normal show. And we're actually using this one as an opportunity. Jim and I talked about how it'd be nice to move our regular podcast recording back to the weekends. So we thought, we just gotten done enjoying this WrestleMania event. Why don't we share with our listeners kind of our love for this and where it started for us as kids and kind of bring them into another piece of the puzzle for Sean and Jim. So this was a great way to do that. So hope you guys will enjoy this episode. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the recently formed DC Infinite Podcast Partnership. Sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. I want to quickly say that DCBService.com is your comic book pre-order source. Remember to link your digital accounts to DCBService.com because 5% of those orders go to your DCB Service purchases. And I do that. I love it. It adds up quickly. So make sure to add that to your account. Remember to check out InStockTrades.com, the sister site that has your trade paperback and hardcover, basically any collected edition at amazing discounts. Orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. James, what kind of a podcast are we?
Pop Culture and Whatnot, a division of Raging Bullets, is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot associated with WrestleMania 30 and the WWE Universe. So, before listening to our show, please make sure to watch the appropriate TV shows and pay-per-views. This way, we can all enjoy the show.
I also want to say we tease a little bit some things that happened on Raw the next night after WrestleMania. So if you didn't watch Raw, you likely are going to want to watch Raw before listening to this as well, because our goal isn't to ruin any of that for you. Let's talk some wrestling.
Great molecules! They're programming the computers for a chain reaction to blow up that atomic pile!
For those of you who haven't heard these episodes before, when we do these pop culture and whatnot episodes, they're kind of a sidestep from our show. It's kind of a bonus episode that we do. And in this case, Jim and I were talking about we wanted to move some of our recordings back to the weekend. And we wanted to do an episode that was kind of fun and representative of some of our history with some of the other kinds of pop culture that we really love as fans, which takes us to pro wrestling. And actually, it's really sad that today we're recording this because you and I had planned to record this before we knew, obviously, seeing as he passed away today, the passing of the Ultimate Warrior, who, for me, I was a huge fan of the Ultimate Warrior. I remember growing up and being a huge fan of Hulk Hogan from before WrestleMania 3. And then when the Warrior came in, it was almost like, I remember him, he was on like that Tuesday Night Titans show before he had actually won the Intercontinental Belt for the first time. And there was something about him then that was just super exciting. So then this guy comes charging down at the match where he wins from the Honky Tonk Man, and it just set off this whole chain reaction of, it was the excitement that you felt from Hulk Hogan in the prime of his career. And the Warrior kind of brought that back to wrestling again. He was one of those guys that did that. I was really sad because I thought the Hall of Fame ceremony, Monday Night Raw when he was on there, it was kind of a resurgence of his connection with wrestling and the fans and things, and you want a guy when he contributed that much, he was that much of an icon, to be able to have that kind of connection again. He's somebody I wanted to see at conventions. He's somebody I wanted to see on television, on the network. talking about some of his history with wrestling, and I think there was a lot for him to offer, and it's really too bad that won't get to come to fruition. But I'm really glad he had to have the chance to have the moments that he did at the Hall of Fame. What was your thoughts today? I mean, this had to been as shocking for you as it was for me.
Oh God, yeah, because I was listening to Opie and Anthony, and they announced it on the show and started talking about it, and initially I was like, what? Yeah, and it was just that because we just saw him. And he looked good. I was even kind of impressed at how well he was looking. I was like, man, that's, obviously he was in Ultimate Warrior shape, but he didn't look like, hunched over. He didn't look like he was walking around in pain, or, he looked, like he'd be around for a little bit. And I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. I'm thinking, this is a nice, positive story. This is and I'm just like you. I was thinking maybe we'd get to see more of him around, and maybe some type of managerial type capacity with some of the younger wrestlers, maybe even a physical wrestler that they have. He'd be a good person to kind of bring along with charisma, or just at conventions and whatnot.
Well, did you watch the Hall of Fame ceremony?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so because he signed a 3-year deal to be an ambassador for the company. It's like a very similar deal to what Hogan's on, and Ric Flair. So he was back with the company, so the odds on seeing him on television in some capacity were very, very high. I honestly think they sign a lot of these guys to the ambassador deals, not for reaching out to the public to talk about the network, but also for programming on the network. Like, I mean, who do you want to see on a lot of these programs? The people who were there. So your Warrior, your Hogan, Flair, people like that you want to see and see their commentary on what it was like during those various eras. So we were going to at least get him in that capacity.
Yeah.
And I had just ordered after the Hall of Fame. I enjoyed his induction speech so much that I ordered that DVD that he just put out, the new one. Basically, because I was into the whole, there's like this resurgence of Warrior, and the only DVD I have where it's just him is that self-destruction one. So I wanted something that was really positive, like talking about, the coolness of the era, because I wanted to relive some of what it was like as a kid to watch The Warrior.
Oh, God. You talk about just, when you first saw him just hitting that ring, and hitting the ring is such an appropriate just description, because he was, he was that freight train, just a full steam, just attacking the ring, and just, you sit there and you're just like, yeah! I remember, you just get pumped. Just him coming to the ring entrance, you get pumped. And I was just like, wow. And, then when he went away for so long, you kind of still remember the stuff. But, it's, oh, man, it was one of those, I'm in the middle of work. And, and I saw that. And, and I was talking to one of the guys I work with. He was a wrestling fan from the 80s. He doesn't watch it now, but back when we were kids, he used to watch it. And so he and I were talking about Warrior and all that stuff. And so it was just one of those, oh man, people who weren't even diehard wrestling fans knew who the Ultimate Warrior was.
Well, he was an entertainer, and that's what they all are. I mean, the skill that they put into that, and, the work ethic they put into what they do, the ones that stand out and, really are just doing amazing things on screen for us. The working out that they do, the things they put their bodies through, the skill at really captivating an audience for an entertainment purpose the way that they do, it's very unique. It's hard to put it, like, even as I'm explaining it as entertainment, I feel like, the whole sports entertainment banner that they talk about is kind of so overused. I don't think it accurately describes the whole experience, but I guess we'll just use that for the sake of argument on this one. But he was one of those guys that he was unique. And, he reminds me of like a Randy Savage, Ricky Steamboat, Hogan, Flair, The Rock, Stone Cold. These are people who, they set themselves apart. Why is Daniel Bryan so popular right now? Because he's not like anybody else. CM Punk, why did he stand out? They do bring something unique to the table that nobody else can do. So it's, really great that he had that opportunity, because did you see that Self-Destruction DVD?
No, I didn't.
I have it, and I won't lie, I'm usually obviously from our podcast, I'm a very positive guy, when I'm into things. But there were elements of it. It was kind of like when the whole Bret Hart thing came down and they did that Wrestling with Shadows. It's almost like certain things overtake your accomplishments. And that DVD kind of took me away from my connection to what I enjoyed about the Warrior. But then I really felt like this, bringing him into the Hall of Fame, giving him a chance to speak, and the way he even addressed that DVD, I thought was really classy. I thought I'm glad he addressed it. I'm glad it wasn't ignored, because that would have been, it's like, why do we have the elephant in the room? And it didn't really fit what I know about him post his time in the WWE. And I was glad he came out and said things like, hey, I was one of the guys in the back, and there might be that people might have had that perception of me, but I felt like I was one of the guys, and that hurt when you were saying I wasn't. And, it was kind of cool to have him kind of come up and say, you made this whole DVD and it was really very one-sided and didn't represent really who I think I am. And it was kind of cool for him to have that opportunity. But then he got away from that, and he was joking around. Like, I loved his whole joke about the DDP yoga. Yeah. He was like, it was clear that he was involved in the night. It wasn't snarky, though. It was kind of like, he started then going into talking about, I thought the advice he was giving the younger the younger wrestlers to say, hey, you know what, just remember that this is your time now, but this is a moment in your life, and you need to plan for the next moment when you're no longer doing this. And I thought his message was very appropriate when you were looking at people like Jake and Scott Hall, who it was really great to see them, coming out of their funk and, really the whole journey that they had that was on like a downward spiral, but then the positive of them being there and like, hey, we survived this, and it's constantly a work in progress, but look where we're at now. And he kind of capped it off with, for you young guys here, take the message of make a plan for your future so you know what you're going to do when this is no longer here. It was, I don't know, I felt like he was a great cornerstone capping everything off, talking about his love for the business and his time when he was there. It was a great speech. I was like, it went on long, but I was captivated by it. So I don't mean long in the sense like it dragged. That was one of the speeches I was most looking forward to. It was not at all what I expected, which made it so much better.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And it was weird when Linda first came out to introduce him. I was like, why is she being the one? And then as her story was going on and just her connection she had with him, I'm like, okay, this was, again, it was a neat side to see of just, of his connection to her and just everything that happened, between them. I thought that was a neat way to open it up. And then you get him with his daughters and you see just this great family man. And I was like, oh, man. And that's the stuff that tears me up now, when I think about just his family. And I think about the people who knew him and, what they're going through.
I'm glad that he had the opportunity with his family to experience all of that. And the reason why that's important is, we can say right now as fans, wow, how sad. And I think there's a connection to his fan base. There's obviously diehard fans who were very into him the whole time. Then there's fans, I consider myself probably a middle-of-the-road fan where, there were certain things that were revealed and stuff in that DVD that, I'm like, oh, I've lost my connection to a certain extent. And I felt like this reconnected me to that era of my life and just how cool he was and exciting. Wrestling is just a great escape. It's like comics, it's like film, it's like, television. It's a great escape from life's stresses. And it was always that for me as well. So it was great to see the Warrior just have an opportunity to come back and really just bring me back into that sense of escapism that he brought to the table. His appearance on Raw I thought was spectacular. I loved when he put the mask on and everything. Yeah. It was just great that he had those moments. It made it more bittersweet and sad when the news came through. But I was glad for his family as well that they got to see him shine again and see what a connection he still has to this day with his fans and how easy he can take a fan like me who had got disconnected because of the fact that there had been a disconnect there And really, he just reminded me why I was a fan to begin with. And I'm really glad that I can say right now that, wow, man, am I just so excited to watch Ultimate Warrior matches. And I was like, the whole weekend was really fantastic going through the Hall of Fame, seeing him at WrestleMania, and then seeing him on Raw. It just was just a great connection. And I'm glad that I can say it right now from the standpoint of it was cool to experience that live as he was going through it all. And I don't know, it's very sad because I would have, like you, I wanted to see more.
Yeah, and it's, and it's weird when you get these entertainers and these performers that, we as a fans, we kind of know the behind the stories, but we don't know everything. We got these little glimpses into their lives and an understanding of kind of what these guys go through. Well, guys and girls, males, females. I don't want to, cut short anyone's involvement in this because this is an industry that I love watching. And when I was younger, I say, man, that'd be a great job to have. Now as an adult, I wouldn't want to do that. And I wouldn't will that upon my children because, that's a rough and tough life to deal with. There's some wonderful perks to it, but there's just the price you pay for that fame. It's I don't know if I would want to take the risk of that price. Yes, it'd be amazing to be some of these people, but I don't know if I could do it. And you see him he had just attacked the life, and he slipped, he fell a little bit, he fought back, he was in a way making a really good recovery right now, and then bam, this happens, and you're just like, oh.
It's funny when you say things like that. It makes me respect the people that are in it and able to keep going and be successful all the more.
Yeah.
It's sad that we have to start this episode this way because it was really kind of a celebration. It was meant to be a celebration of our mutual love for the whole wrestling experience and how it's been there. I'm glad, though, that we can come at it from the standpoint of, wow, how much more we're reconnected. I don't know, do you feel that way? I feel like, this whole weekend really reconnected me with just how cool he was and what a mark he made. And he talked about the legacy that he left, as far as being that kind of legendary icon. And I think this is why we watch entertainment, to get exposed and taken away out of our life stresses and to really connect with these larger than life characters that they make. And he crafted a character in the Ultimate Warrior that, my wife, who does not watch wrestling, she knew who the Warrior was. And that says something. It's sometimes you become such an icon that you split out of, the field that you're in, and there's a larger awareness of you, kind of like what Hulk Hogan is, if that makes sense. The Warrior was one of those type of people. She knew who he was because of the gimmick was larger than just being a part of wrestling. And I think that's cool that, in this moment. And it looks like it's one of those stories where, it's an unfortunate health issue that happened, and there's not a darkness to the story. Which is good because in the sense that I just want his legacy for people to remember this cool weekend that he had and, how we all got to reconnect with him. There's like a positive energy to the whole thing, which I think you'd like.
Yeah, and I'm definitely going to watch WrestleMania 6 again this weekend just because that was one of his iconic matches with Hogan. And this weekend's probably going to be spent watching some Warrior matches.
Well, they're doing on the network. I just saw, because you know how they update you on things that are coming up? They're doing a special tonight on him.
Yeah, they're doing a tribute. 8 o'clock, I believe.
Yeah, and I'm going to end up watching that one just because I think it's really cool that they're doing something. And that's one of the strengths, I think, of the network is being able to take all that footage and put some stuff together so that way we have a chance to kind of connect with that. So, let's talk about this weekend, though, and the build-up to the weekend, because I know we both had different experiences. This was the first year that we had WrestleMania 30 with the build-up to it on the network, where they've got their own network now. And instead of doing a traditional pay-per-view, where we pay for the pay-per-view the way we normally do, if you had a network, you can basically just get the pay-per-view with your network package, which was really a different experience. But what I think we should start off with before we jump into that is, What was our individual history with wrestling? Like, how long have we been watching this? Do we stop watching at any point in time? But when did it start? Like, for you, when did you start watching? When was your first, like, wrestling experiences watching it? Do you remember, like, what was your first WrestleMania? Were you watching wrestling before that?
Well, I've been watching wrestling since I was a little kid. I wasn't a diehard loyal person. I was a Saturday. Saturday is when they were airing. I think Saturday afternoon when they were airing, and I can't remember which TV show it was called even. And I'd watch it, and I'd watch a little bit. But I grew up in the amateur wrestling family. My brothers and even myself for a little while, we were all the quote-unquote real wrestling. So to watch professional wrestling in my house, usually you would get ridiculed just because, that's not real. But the entertainment of it, and it was funny because my brother Dave was the first one that I won over, and we started watching it, and then brother Bill was occasionally would watch it just because of some of the action, but it became something that I watched more than my brothers did, but they wouldn't laugh at me when I was watching it just because it wasn't quote unquote real. They started seeing that there is some action and some entertainment to it. Especially, I would say, Hogan and Warrior. My brother Dave was a huge Warrior fan. I'm going to have to talk to him, make sure he's okay, because he liked just the Warrior aspect of it. Just that I'm going to, beat the living hell out of everybody, and there's nothing you can do because I am the ultimate warrior. So that persona and just that power that he brought, Dave really enjoyed, and Dave really connected to. But, so I've been since a kid watching. It wasn't until WrestleMania 3 that I saw my first pay-per-view, my first WrestleMania. But I remember the events of WrestleMania 1, WrestleMania 2, and I was watching the shows, and I knew what was going on in them, but I couldn't actually see the events, because my family didn't have any type of cable or anything like that. And I saw WrestleMania 3 because our high school principal, Mr. McGinnis, recorded it and brought in the tape, and we, watched it during lunch hours, in the high school E-room. So I was watching, WrestleMania 3 that way, which was, kind of interesting, just sitting there and watching, the matches. But then you could only watch so much of the pay-per-view because then, the lunch hour was ending and you had to go to class. You're like, oh, no, wait, hold on, just wait till the end of this match and stuff like that. So those were kind of the experiences. And then like anything, with me, college, things drop off because, I didn't have time, didn't have access to a TV, a lot of times in college. But I always would go back to it when summertime would roll around, or I'd have free time, or, when I graduated college, I'd have patches where I'd watch, then I'd stop watching, then I'd go back to it again. And, wrestling's always been a part of, my television viewing in some capacity, whether it's WWE, whether there was the Ring of Honor we were watching for a little while, some ECW stuff I used to watch. Wrestling is just that's something that I always go back to.
Yeah, wrestling's been a lot like comics for me, which is it's appropriate that we're talking about this. As a kid in elementary school, it was before WWF, which became WWE, it was Georgia Wrestling. And that they had people like the Road Warriors, Tommy Wildfire Rich, Gordon Soley was the announcer. It was our first connection to a lot of those wrestlers, and we'd come back to school and talk about it, and we'd each pretend we were one of the wrestlers, and it became kind of one of those playground things that you did. And I kept watching wrestling on television up until then. And WrestleMania 1 and 2, I believe the only way you could see those is if you went to the closed circuit places. I don't think there was pay-per-view for them at the time. 3 was and I might be wrong on that, so you can take that with a grain of salt. I remember seeing a lot of the information on those, or the footage on those, through that Rock and Wrestling thing on MTV that was going on at the time. With Cyndi Lauper and Mr. T and Captain Lou and all that stuff. So I was very familiar with all that more from the MTV connection that led me to watch the programming. And then WrestleMania 3 was the first one we got. We actually, my family, my dad let us get the pay-per-view. I remember one of my best friends, Mike Sullivan, down the way, during the day, we were like going between each other's houses talking about the matches. And the big one was, Hogan and Andre. And it was really this sense of, did you think Hogan was going to win or Andre was going to win? People would say, same thing you said, it was the fake, wrestling and all that. But it's that suspension of disbelief that was so strong for that match, because I won't lie, at that age, I was thinking, even though I knew, quote unquote, it was fake, whatever you want to say, you still had that sense of, could he win? And they had totally captivated me to the point where I was really convinced, like, that this was up in the air and could the Hulkster do it? And that pay-per-view, watching it and those moments building to it, I remember being blown away by Savage and Steamboat. Like, I wasn't as familiar with them. That match just made me, with both of them, I was like, whoa. I'm very into both of these guys, because that was the show stealer on it. The Hogan and Andre had the big moments because of what that was, but that made me appreciate the athleticism of what these guys were doing. That Savage and Steamboat won, and I can still watch that match over and over again today, and never get bored with it, just because of the kind of the poetry to the storytelling that they were doing in that match. But that was my first pay-per-view where we paid for it, and I watched every one of them since, because it became, for me, my grade school friends, that was what we watched together. So it was a bonding of friends. And back then there wasn't the monthly pay-per-views. There was WrestleMania. And then eventually there was SummerSlam and Survivor Series, but there weren't, like the monthly ones. That came much later. So when we were watching them, when you built to WrestleMania, that was your big pay-per-view event. And I've seen all of them on pay-per-view since 3. So it's been like kind of that experience. You and I, like as you mentioned, that we did things like Ring of Honor. I went to ECW shows when they were actually in Cleveland. We went to some Ring of Honor shows in Dayton, Cleveland, and a few other places. But when we did the Ring of Honor shows, we got to see people like CM Punk and Bryan Danielson, who became Daniel Bryan, and Cesaro. Actually, we saw one match with Cesaro before they debut with the WWE. We got to actually see them back in some of their indie days, and it's kind of cool to see now that those guys have come into wrestling.
Yeah, it's and just of course,
into WWE wrestling, I should
right,
say,
yeah.
because they were always in wrestling. But
it's funny because you were, once again, you brought me back into wrestling with, because I was watching it at my house, and there was I can't remember one of the pay-per-views, because it was after college, and I was living with my folks, and I was watching wrestling. Mom and Dad would actually watch it with me. And the one pay-per-view, I'm like, hey, let's just get the pay-per-view, because and my mom and I watched the pay-per-view. My dad went to sleep because Dad doesn't stay up that late. But and so I remember I was talking to you about it. One time we went out and you're like, hey, we got a group of guys. Why don't you come over with that? And so I started watching pay-per-views with you over at our friend of ours, Braddock's house. And that, of course, led to our whole fantasy wrestling league that we had.
That's right.
Which that was a fun experience.
That was.
And,
Yeah, you Jim had made up a whole scoring system for a fantasy wrestling league. So there was, at the times 4 or 5 of us that were involved in this, and we would pick wrestlers, and we had a point system based on things that they did during the course of the week. It just made it kind of fun then when we get together and watch the pay-per-views to see who the one with the most points was the champion of the fantasy wrestling until the next month. And it was a really cool experience. And
yes, we did have a championship belt that, once again, my folks helped me make.
Mm-hmm. Then, years later, and this for me has always been a connection with friends. It's always Jimmy Braddock and I, who we mentioned earlier, since little kids, we watched this together. So for me, it's always been kind of a sense of getting together with the guys, some camaraderie, kind of just getting into the whole experience and, just having fun. We've got a great group of guys that we watch with now. My friend Phil and Lou, who I met through Jim. It's a group of 4 of us that watch it. And it's a great experience again, just like that sense of camaraderie, getting together and watching it and joking around with each other, trying to predict what's going to happen. Even though, there's scripted storylines, it's for that moment, like you do with a scripted film or a scripted television show, whatever, just being captivated and drawn into the whole thing. I've come to learn the biggest compliment you give the match is when you quiet down.
Yeah.
Because we talk a lot during the pay-per-view, and there's matches where all of a sudden it's almost dead silence. And that's a sign that these guys are doing something really unique on screen, because you don't want to have a conversation. You want to watch what they're doing. Which brings me to, we talked about our experience with it. Let's talk about the big event that just happened, WrestleMania 30. We'd like to talk just a little bit about, before we talk about the actual pay-per-view, if we could quickly, like having the network now and the build to WrestleMania, did you watch any of the additional content that went along on the network leading up to WrestleMania? I know you've had like some crazy weeks at work, so I don't know how much access you had to actually watch some of this. But what was your experience leading up to WrestleMania 30? Was there a build of excitement for you? How much of it did you get to enjoy?
Well, definitely a huge build of excitement for me. And I did get to watch some stuff, nothing near as much as I wanted to, because as you said, I've just been, work life has just been absolutely insane for me. And I have very little free time to take care of things outside of just, I come home, I go to bed, I go to work. Come home, go to bed, go to work. And that's how my life has been. And then I get caught up on the stuff I don't do during the week on the weekend. So that was a lot of my time. I did get to see some of the roundtable discussions and things like that they had going. Of course, I watched the all of the Hall of Fame. I was like, I'm not missing that. I'm like, because that's something I really was looking forward to. Just because I'm like, this is the first time I get to see the entire thing in its entirety. I want to see this. So I definitely made sure I could, sat back and watched it. I didn't even watch the red carpet lead up to that, which
I did too.
I thought was kind of fun. And it was a neat experience. And I'm like, I want more stuff like that, like those general discussions and just the, bunch of people. It makes you feel like you're sitting there, with them and just hanging out and going, yeah, I like that idea. That's pretty neat. And I wish they'd have like live call-in stuff where, regular everyday idiots like me could actually interact with the guys on the panels and stuff like that. I think that would be a neat thing to develop down the line.
I think they'll probably build the stuff like that because the original programming, because you figure this is a brand new thing. The original programming and interactive programming has increased more and more as the series has gone on. Let's talk about, they had the WrestleMania Today programs, which was, it was Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, 2-hour programs that were building with, special reports and analysis of the matches leading up to the whole event. I didn't miss any of those. It was really nice that I didn't watch them exactly when they were on. I ended up watching them later in the evening on the respective days that they aired because I had things for work that I had to get done. But I really love the fact that when you go into this network thing, you just click on this program and you watch it. And I figured my original intention was I watched them either on my Apple TV or on my iPad or on my computer. I pulled it up on the screen and I was watching it kind of along with doing some other things. So it was really neat to be able to kind of pull it up anywhere I wanted to and just start watching. I could pause it in one place, then go watch it somewhere else, to finish watching the rest of it. So it was really nice to experience it that way. But then they had a Legends of WrestleMania program, which, it was a 1-hour round table talking about it and WrestleMania experiences with it, which had Flair and Foley and JBL and stuff like that talking about their respective feelings on these matches, but then the history of WrestleMania in general, what were their favorite moments, and then the Hall of Fame. And I'm with you. I watched the red carpet thing, too. My wife was watching the Final Four, so I went down with her, and I brought my iPad, and I threw it on, and I had, I was kind of doing what you do with a sports game, where I had the one earpiece in my head, but at the same time I was hanging out, because I wanted to spend time with her, and, it was cool to hang out with her and watch the games, but I was watching that along with it. It was cool because all of that stuff ended in time for when Carlos Colon came on and Ultimate Warrior, so I was watching that on the TV. Which I really wanted to see those. It was great watching them on my iPad, and it worked really well. But it was nice to see those on the screen, especially the Warrior, because that was the one I was really waiting for. I thought the whole Hall of Fame event was fantastic. I loved the bits with Mr. T's mother.
Oh, God. Now, do you think that was a work or a shoot?
No, I think that was... I think he was leading to a point and never got there.
Oh, okay.
Because I think they had to cut him off because look how long the whole event took. I mean, it went, into the wee hours. So I really think that they cut him off. I think Kane coming out was like they had to speed things up a bit. Otherwise, they were never going to get to the Warrior.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because when that first happened, first thing I thought was, okay, this is all a work, and, Mr. T is going to interfere in Kane's match as kind of a, don't disrespect my mama type of storyline. And then I started looking at the clock going, oh no, they really needed to cut him off.
Do you watch the Hall of Fame stuff when they air them usually?
Yeah, in the past, yeah, I've seen.
They don't usually do like angles at those. So I wasn't thinking that, but I was like kept wondering, and I don't know, did you wonder like where that was going? Like, because I thought he was saying really sweet things about his mom. So I didn't think it was like a bad speech in the sense, that he was saying anything wrong or anything. And I was quite enjoying some of the stories. But, like, Lita went long with hers. But I was really captivated because her stories were engaging. They were leading to other stories. Like, there was a build to, like, a present day for her, which was the goal of what she was doing. So because I liked her so much, I really liked hearing her history and like how that all connected. And the stuff she did with Arn and Ray I thought was great, and her acknowledging the relationship with Trish and the Team Extreme and just her whole journey I thought was really captivating. So when I say hers is long, I should clarify that she could have kept going for another, 20 minutes and I would have been fine because I was really enjoying that. When Mr. T came on, there came a point where I was like, geez, I hope he gets to what the point of this is. Besides, I just love my mom. And maybe that was all he wanted to say at that moment. I kept wondering, not knowing much about him outside of there, did something happen to his mom? Because, like, we didn't really get to the, how did mom influence the person he became that, like, was this symbol at wrestling or something. I kept wanting him to connect it to, at some point in time, saying, thanks to the fans for honoring me for being a part of WrestleMania or something like that. It never came to a closure. Like, that was the one speech that never had any closure.
Right. And he was just, again, it's tough to never having to give a speech like that. It's hard for me to say what I would do or how I would handle it. But the speech, classes and the public speaking classes I've had to take and all that type of stuff I had to take through school, they always say, make sure you have your beginning, middle, and end. Right. And you have that going into your beginning stuff so you know where you're at, where you're going, and where you want to finish up at. And to me, it seemed like he had where he wanted to go, where he wanted to honor his family, which is a very noble, thing to do. And I think, that's, really cool that he's given this opportunity to honor his whole family, but he didn't have the schedule layout really of, I go to this story, then I end it. He didn't have the plan. It was kind of open aired, and that leads to problems when you're giving a speech.
I think he had a plan, though, because there was more speech. So I think there was, whether or not it would have actually achieved what you're talking about is, they're two different things. But for me, I wasn't bored with his. I just felt bad because I felt like there was a speech there. I wanted to see what the ending was, and I was hoping that it was going to lead to some form of point. I thought the crowd was perfect because they started getting interactive with it, and I think they took a speech that could have become boring and kept it interesting and fun by playing off it. So I never got bored during it because the parts where they were you got a "This is awesome" chant.
Yes, you got a "This is awesome" chant.
And then they started doing the whats and stuff like that. Yeah. But the thing I loved about it was the crowd was on because I never felt like they were being disrespectful. Because, you can get some crowds that, like, are disrespectful and they just don't get it. This was a crowd of fans, clearly. So they made that fun because of the fact that they were having fun with it without crossing a line, which you don't always see when you get a crowd like that. And I thought they were excellent because I thought that they kept that moving, kept it fun. The darkest speech for me was Jake's.
Oh God, man!
And I love Jake Roberts. So I was glad to see him honored. I was glad that in the end he brought it back into the positive end of it, because I think, the fact that he's there was the point. I think he was trying to send a message of just how dark life got from him and how that battle is still like something that he's always going to have. But it was great to see him there still. That was the real message. But there were some parts where I was like, because I'm a huge Jimmy Bradick, our friend, would say the same thing. When Jake was in the ring and when he was on good guy, bad guy, whatever, we were huge fans of that guy because the character he developed. We talk about Lex Luthor on the podcast for like DC as being one of those characters. When they skew him a little good, when they skew him a little bad, he's just incredibly compelling and interesting. Jake is kind of like that, with his character, because his speeches were so good that whether you loved him or hated him, he was throwing out some stuff that just made you go, what did he just say? For as much as you talk about the Warrior on the mic and some of the craziness, Jake was spewing all kinds of cool stuff. He sold you on the match. And
just how dangerous he was, even though he was never this physical, powerful specimen. He sold you on the fact that, yes, I completely believed watching him wrestle that he would beat that guy who is in so much better shape than him. Why? Because he's Jake the Snake Roberts. Because he takes, and just that slow, that soft style, that presence and power that he had. I was always a huge Snake fan.
Yeah. So, and I was glad to see him there because over the years, I tend to follow the wrestling dirt sheets and all that kind of stuff, like I follow comics behind the scenes. And I was always saddened to hear that he was having such a tough time of it because I have such fond memories of him. So it was cool to see him there. And the same thing with Scott Hall. I thought Scott Hall looked fantastic. I mean, I know he had the gray hair and stuff like that, but that's irrelevant. He looked rested, if that makes any sense at all. He looked well.
Yeah.
For any other way to say it. So it was great to see like DDP feeling so proud of these two being there, and he should, because they're two guys that have had such a tough time, and I was glad to see Scott Hall have that moment and his friends coming out. I don't know, I've always liked Scott Hall as well, because I remember before he was Razor Ramon, when he was Big Scott Hall, in his early days.
Yeah.
And, I'm glad to see that guy come full circle. I hope it continues for him, because you don't want to see somebody who's entertained you ever, have those horrible downturns that they do. I'd like to see him succeed. I'd like to see him go on to something. You talk about like how you wanted to see the Warrior kind of come as a manager or something. I don't care if they manage or anything. I would love them behind the scenes to be doing something, or to be on, DVDs or on panels or something, just where you just see that they're doing well. You know what I mean? It's just that's the kind of thing that I want to see. They get them on one of their reality shows that are coming up or something. I don't care. You just want to see these people doing well and, being able to survive, making money, whatever, so they can do that just because they take you back to a certain period in your life. Kind of the way we talk about comics. There's certain comic eras that take us back to certain times in our lives. For us who've been long fans of this, there are certain wrestlers and certain entertainers that take us back to certain eras in our life. And he's one of those guys that has had multiple eras where I've been very into him. And I was glad to see him have a nice positive opportunity there as well. Did you have a favorite speech?
It's weird because my favorite speech would be Jake Roberts, but as you said, there was such a sadness of the pain that he went through. But again, you talk about how he had that down period, then he ended strong, and the stuff with his grandkids and stuff like that. Just, I gotta admit, I was like sitting there, I'm getting emotional watching this, going, man, Jake still, and even when they started chanting one more match for him, he's like, oh man, I can't. And you just like, my heart was breaking for him just because, he recognizes I can't physically do it. The mind is still there. The heart's still there. I want to do this, but I can't. And that's the kind of stuff where I wish we would get those guys as managers, so we would still get that presence, because you could still do stuff with him. He can't get physical anymore because his body is breaking down, and their life on the road would probably be, would probably not be a good thing for him. But there's still those moments I wish I could just get a couple more moments of Jake Snake, a couple more moments of him doing his thing. And so that was the thing where just his speech was just so amazing that it really pulled me. And of course, Warrior, we talked about just how awesome that speech was. So those are my top two that I got to say were, those are my top two. With probably Jake just edging out Warrior just a little bit.
My top two were Warrior and Lita. Lita's speech was, I think, the most entertaining of the night for me, just because I loved that whole era with Lita and Trish Stratus and everything. And I was a fan of Lita in the indies before she came to WWE. I remember seeing her in those roles, and I love that she referenced S.A. Rios and all that kind of stuff. It was really, really cool. But the Warrior was the one I think I was most looking forward to. I want to give an honorable mention. I liked that Carlos Colon speech only because I'm admittedly not as familiar with him, and it was cool the way that they explained his important role to wrestling and to how many people that he had touched, and his breaking out and starting his own company and really kind of dominating a whole territory, because I'm a big fan of the territory era in wrestling. I want to see more of Carlos Colon's matches, just to kind of get a flavor for who he was and what he brought to the table. So that I think that's where these basically these Hall of Fame things are a real victory. When you can take somebody like that and bring him to a new generation, I think that's awesome. So I'm excited to kind of learn more about him, admitting my own ignorance there. I just think that's kind of fun. And I want to see some of this. I'm going to check the app and see if there's more material on him. If not, I'll go to YouTube and stuff, but I'll start on the the network, seeing as I've got that.
Yeah, I like those type of inductees that I have no idea who they are, and they're not that mainstream. It gives, granted, the WWE Hall of Fame is just exactly that. It's not a professional wrestling Hall of Fame. It's just WWE. So when they branch out and they pull in people like him, it adds an element of legitimacy. It adds something to the actual program that we're like, see, it's not just about the guys who are really popular. It is about these people who are, the building blocks of this industry.
And they've done that every year, where they start bringing in people who are outside of WWE and honor them, for their contributions. Yeah. They did Bill Watts the one year and stuff like that. And people who I'm like Carlos Colon, I was familiar with his name. I know that he, is somebody important, as far as having, a major role in wrestling. But I'd never seen anything. And I thought it was really cool that they honored him and kind of made an awareness there. So I'm into seeing some stuff with him just to see what the deal is. And I think that's cool. So I thought that speech, and I liked his presence there. I thought his placement was great. I know that Carlito was making some jokes about the fact that, and we're cut short on time. But I honestly thought the placement of him before the Ultimate Warrior was a good spot for him, because I thought we needed another positive there, where it was really just kind of honoring, somebody with a completely positive situation. And jumping from him then to the Warrior, I thought just worked really, really well and got me more interested in Carlos Colon because of the placement. So I thought the pacing of the night was really well done. And Paul Bearer, we didn't really talk about that one. I was glad that Kane inducted him. I loved the story and how Kane kind of dropped his corporate Kane kind of look to get really personal on some of the stories with them on the road and what that looked like, and his kids getting a chance to induct him. I thought that was neat. It's too bad he didn't get a chance to be there for his induction, but I remember Percy Pringle from the World Class days, and to see him, kind of branch into being Paul Bearer and going forward. It was just really neat. It was cool. I was glad they honored him.
Yeah, that was a good one. I'm glad that he got in. So that's, again, those are just the good. You want to say good job. That's something that he needed to go in. He needed to be honored, and I was glad to see it. Now
the pay-per-view. You want
question for you?
Go for it.
When you were watching it on the network, did you have issues with pixelation and skipping and sound issues?
No.
Because I did throughout a lot of them. That there were parts of Lita's that pixelated on me. There were parts of Mr. T's that just.
How are you watching it?
I'm watching it on the network on my computer.
Is it on a laptop or a desktop?
No, desktop. wired in, no non-wireless.
How old's the computer?
What?
How old's the computer?
I don't know. I got the Windows 7, so.
Okay, so it's not that old.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, so
check the speed from your cable provider. Check to see like what your speed is and everything. I don't know. You shouldn't do that because I guess what I'm telling you, my experience was all the programming that I told you I watched on the network. The Hall of Fame I watched live, so I wasn't watching like a rerun of it. I watched the whole stream live. And it was crystal clear in an HD. Now, admittedly, I was watching it on my iPad. That particular program I was watching on my iPad, which usually if I'm going to get pixelation, I get it on my iPad. But in this case, I didn't get any. It was crystal clear. And then when I switched to the TV later, it was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, you know me, because I always worry about stuff. So all the previous programming I had watched had been, previously recorded, this and that. I never watched anything live. So the first thing I watched live was the induction. So I'm worried that the crowd, the network can't handle this high volume. So I actually ordered the pay-per-view on regular cable.
Did you really?
Yeah. Because I was worried that when I watched the pay-per-view, I'd have an issue. And I didn't have a single issue throughout the entire pay-per-view. So I don't have to do the double ordering again. But for WrestleMania, I was not going to miss anything. If it started giving me problems, I was going to run downstairs and watch it downstairs. So it was funny that I had, I've had it both spots. And what was on cable was a little bit different in the beginning than what was on the network.
Did you have the audio issue prior to WrestleMania? That 2 hours beforehand? Did you watch that, the build?
Well, any of the programming, I never had any audio issues until the Hall of Fame ceremony.
No, hold on. I'm talking about before WrestleMania. There was like a known audio issue. Did you watch the 2 hours before WrestleMania started?
Bits and pieces. I was in and out.
Okay, because there was a bit where Trish Stratus came out. She was talking where the audio, you could still hear it, but it sounded like they were in a glass of water.
Yeah, I didn't see any of that. I was. Okay. Before WrestleMania, I had some food I was eating, so I was watching the stuff downstairs because they had the cable had a pre-show type thing going on, and then as I'm watching the cable pre-show, it was really just a giant advertisement for WrestleMania, some backstories, there was some history of WrestleMania, and then I started seeing it. They were really advertising WrestleMania 29, and I'm like, what the heck is going on here? So I got done eating, and I went upstairs and started watching it on the network, and I caught right as the tag match was starting.
Okay.
I'm like, wait a minute. This, so I'm running back and forth between my computer room and my family room, and seeing that the cable provider completely gave something different on the pre-show than what the WWE Network gave. And I was able to watch the tag match because I watched it on my computer, and then I just spent the rest of the evening up in my computer room, didn't have any issues. So
well, they and that was my experience too. Phil and Lou, two friends of mine, came over, and my wife Mariah and I were watching, the first 2 hour build into it, and it was somewhere during the first or second hour, as it gotten into it, Trish Stratus had come out and was on like the panel talking about it, and the audio had started having issues. So my first thing you were talking about was, oh my gosh, exactly what you were thinking, that there was an issue. The video was crystal clear though, so it wasn't a video issue, and there was no skipping or hiccuping. So I went upstairs, and because it'd gone on for like 5 minutes and no changes. So I went upstairs and I checked on, my computer, just to see, is everyone else having audio issues, or is it, a problem on my end, and I need to do what you said. I've got company over. I'm ordering it if I need to. I saw that everybody was having that, so I went back down, and actually by the time I got back down, the audio issue was cleared up. It had said on there that it was a known audio issue that everyone was having. So then that tag match, and that's actually where we should start talking about it. So we had the Usos versus the Real Americans versus Los Matadores and Rybaxel. I didn't realize it was an elimination. Like, I thought it was going to be one of those fatal four-ways where it was, first pinfall to a win. I'm really glad it was an elimination, because it was a match that when it first started off, like, we were talking a lot and we were into it. It was a good match. But as the elimination started to happen, I started getting more excited for it. We all did. And when it got down to the Usos versus the Real Americans, that was the real meat and potatoes of the match, you know, seeing those. And I thought the elimination, in its own way, led to a build to, this is the showdown we really want to see. And it went the way it should go, you know, with Cesaro winning and the fight. I mean, Cesaro losing. I mean, the Real Americans losing, and the fight between Cesaro and his partner, Jack Swagger. Because I love Cesaro, and I so wanted to see Cesaro have a moment. It was cool when that all went down. It was a great opening build right before the actual pay-per-view kicked off.
Yeah, I absolutely love the Usos. I think that they're just the wonderful tag team, and I'm so glad. You know, they've got they're getting this great push.
Yeah, I was very, very torn during that match because I wanted to see a Cesaro push. If the Real Americans were going to stay together, I wanted to see them win, but I like the Usos for the same reason you're mentioning. So it was like I was rooting for both teams just because of what I wanted to see, you know, them go there. I'm glad the Usos kept it, though, because I think they need to stay together and need to have a nice run because they deserve it. So after that, were you surprised that they started with Daniel Bryan versus Triple H?
No, I thought they were going to do that so there would be
enough time to rest.
A lengthy time from the first match to the second match. That would make sense to me. You know, and I like the fact that they immediately commented on that. I think Michael Cole initially commented on the fact that Triple H wanted to make sure if he wins, he's got plenty of time to rest and recover.
Yeah, that was great.
Which, again, great usage of commentary just to say what everyone's thinking, but just make sure you hammer it home that this is why. And they put the evil side to it, saying, oh, Triple H, he's so confident he's going to win that, you know, he's doing these little things to help him out. And it was some great banter between Cole and JBL, just because he's like, hey, why wouldn't he? It makes sense. It's intelligent. It's a smart thing to do. He's a cerebral assassin for a reason. I love that.
I really loved how they handled the ending of it with Daniel Bryan winning, but then Triple H destroying him, just adding more to the sense of, is there any way possible for Daniel Bryan to win the whole thing? It was a great story build. You know, if you're going to take a pay-per-view and try to tell a dramatic story all the way through that gets us excited for the ending, they really did a good job.
Yeah, I was thinking, I was pretty comfortable that they were going to have Daniel win it.
So was I.
You know, but I did like seeing the beatdown he got, and on some hands, I don't think they needed that final beatdown because he already took a pretty heavy pounding. But again, it does add to the impossibility of Daniel winning. It adds to the whole, will he even make it to the match? And I'm thinking just, you know, multiple storylines where they'll initially say Daniel Bryan can't make it. And then as the match is going on, he comes running down the ring and, you know, joins in the match. And, you know, and it was just thinking different stuff they could do, you know, with the way it would play out. But I did definitely enjoy the match. And there was multiple times where I'm like, you know, as much as I was saying Daniel Bryan was probably going to win, in the back of my mind, I did still think, you know what, they could really do a push for Triple H. He could win it and, you know, win it all and really sink home the reality era of wrestling and really, you know, do some pushing with this and, you know, make some, you know, shock and awe everybody.
See, I wasn't thinking that Triple H was going to win the whole thing. If Triple H went on, which I didn't think was going to happen, I was really convinced Daniel Bryan was going to go on. But if they did throw him on there, I didn't think he was going to win. I thought it would be like a Batista or Orton or something like that. My bigger worry was Batista because I think that would have been a huge mistake. I like Batista. I actually do like Batista. I know the crowd's like tearing him apart right now. I like him. But I think there's a big message being sent as far as, yeah, but you got guys that have been on your roster the whole year that we've been backing, we're into, and we want to see one of them win. You know, because we actually care because we're following their story all year long. So I thought it was great the way that the crowd has really driven this and that they're listening to the crowd. The Shield versus Kane and the New Age Outlaws. Tell me that match wasn't booked perfectly.
Oh my God, I absolutely loved just the massive destruction that it was. And I was so cheering because all the rumors of the Shield splitting up and everything that's going to go bad between them. Just seeing those guys just completely destroy their enemy just gives me like this hope that they'll keep them together. Hope that things will work out and everything.
So with you.
What?
I am so with you.
Oh, God.
It's so cliche that, like, when you're a group, you have to split up eventually. They did a 3-part interview with them on that build-up to WrestleMania. I'm sorry, I know I'm cutting you off. I apologize. But they did a 3-part build in that WrestleMania Today thing where every episode of it, they had a behind-the-scenes look at the Shield where the guys were talking about their history together. And one of the things that Dean Ambrose said is, they like to compare themselves, and they said they mean this with total respect, to the Four Horsemen. And I like that comparison. And I think the era that they're referencing, a group stayed together for a long, long time. The Shield really should. I think, take a different route. And even if you break these guys off into being singles wrestlers, that doesn't mean they have to split up as a group. Keep them together. Keep them supporting each other. You can. It's more interesting to turn them face and heel. Turning them face now they're interesting in a new way. And to see them dominating as a face group like they just did there, that's great. It's refreshing. And I want to see them, take another shot at the tag team titles. I want to see them take another shot at a singles title. And, I know that Dean Ambrose is holding the U.S. title, but I want to see, these guys get more gold. And to show that as a group, they're stronger because of their relationship as a group. They work. I just like to see the cliche broken, that you don't necessarily have to split these guys up to make them interesting. Do interesting storylines keeping them together. Yeah. Let us rally behind a group for a change.
Oh, God, yeah. And exactly what you're saying is where I was going with it. Just the Horseman comparison. They didn't split up the Horsemen. There was always was and always will be the Horsemen out there, and they could very easily do that with the Shield, whether they're fighting for tag team, whether they're fighting different individuals. How awesome would it be to see one of them, Roman Reigns, get the world title, and then have one of the other two actually challenge him for it, and just those guys just going back. They could do just an amazing match where it's two faces fighting, two people who respect each other, two people who are friends so they know each other. And moves, counter moves, counter moves. Goes for the Superman punch, but is able to avoid it because he knows it's coming. Goes for this.
Yeah.
And that would just be a great. I love those psychological matches and those counter move, bam, bam, bam. Those type of action matches. Those three guys could put that on. And they could put on a clinic of just how to do that type of match, and you could do that with keeping them together.
Yes.
You don't need to break them up. And I'm so worried they're going to, but seeing that steamroll just makes me think maybe they're going to keep them together. Maybe we got a chance, especially because they're breaking up the Real Americans. Like, okay, They're breaking up that team. Maybe they'll keep this group together.
Yeah, because I think what you're saying is you could do. How great would it be to do a Seth Rollins Roman Reigns match or a Dean Ambrose Seth Rollins match or whatever, for particular titles, just because that person winds up being a number one contender. And I wouldn't overdo that. You do those for like a special event or a build or something like that. And you're right, it's a unique experience that you don't get elsewhere. And maybe tease that there's tension because they're going up against each other, by talking smack and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, they put the Shield ahead of all that. You know what I mean? I think that would be cool. Just something different and refreshing. The Battle Royal. What did you think of that? What do you think of the concept?
I really liked it. I didn't know how I was going to feel about it, because especially with everyone starting in the ring together, it was so crowded. I'm like, wait, huh? And then just as people were quickly eliminated, you had some action here, a little bit of funny moments, and it's. On one hand, I like the fact that they had so many people just because it gave all these wrestlers a chance to appear at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
So I was happy for that. I was glad that, because, it was neat to make sure everybody had a place in it. They could have done the concept by cutting down the number of people in the ring very easily. They could have cut that number in half, and you would have gotten a little bit more interaction, a little bit more action. But there was still some funny, cool moments that I definitely enjoyed the match and loved the ending. That was absolutely outstanding.
When we saw the guys in the ring, we as a group said, who was your prediction? When I saw Cesaro there, I just really thought they were going to give it to him, because I knew that was a guy they were ready to push. And I give the Big Show a lot of credit because I thought the way that whole thing was handled, I think Big Show obviously did him a real solid by helping to put him over. I loved the handshake at the end. I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff because it's not overused. And when you got like somebody like Cesaro who, has some of those, and we just saw him recently do like, kind of a handshake hug thing on the NXT Arrival thing, which I thought was really, really cool. It was cool to see him in that moment. Did you watch that NXT pay-per-view that's on there?
No, I didn't.
Highly recommend it. It was like their first foray into the live streaming on the network, and it's still available, obviously, on there. It was great. The opening match is Cesaro versus Sami Zayn, and it was really good.
Oh, cool.
So I would, if you're a Cesaro fan, I would watch it for even if you don't know who Sami Zayn is. But that Battle Royal was really cool. The one part I had an issue with, I'm a huge Kofi Kingston fan. I'm a huge John Morrison fan. I like when they do the parkour little tricks to stay in the ring. Okay, I know that it was it had to have been a botched move. He was supposed to land on the stairs, right?
Yeah.
The whole my feet are still on the stairs thing, no.
Yeah.
I understand, if he landed on his hands and he pushes himself back in, I give that one a little bit of a pass just because of the athleticism. When your whole body winds up on the ground, I don't care if your feet are hanging in the air, if they're touching the stairs, if they're still on the edge of the mat. You're on the ground, fully on the ground. That went a little too far. And I love him. So, I mean, it was that should have been the decision to say, what, dude, sorry. The move was botched. We cannot ruin the match by throwing you back in with this. And I'm a fan of his athletic moves. I think he's brilliant. That was one where went a little too far.
Yeah, I'll co-sign with you. And when it was going on, I was like, but I still liked it. The fact that he was able to keep the feet on and they were able to, I was like, oh, okay. Now, if he had landed on his hands and they'd just been his hands and his feet on the thing and not his whole body laying on the ground, I probably would have given him a bigger pass.
Oh, yeah.
And
he's done stuff like that, which is brilliant, which is what they were going for as an athletic. I'm guessing the plan was for him to land on the stairs.
Yeah, that's what I took it as well. But he had too much force, and he was going. Though I will give him credit, the fact that he was able to keep his feet on was pretty cool.
Yeah.
That did take some actual true athleticism to keep it from sliding all the way off, because he had some serious force going there. So you give him that. So
we had a feel, and I love him. So I mean, I think he's tremendously athletic. So I mean, it's a very minor complaint. It wasn't something like ruin the match for me. It actually became very fun because whenever anybody else was eliminated, we're saying, well, what body parts actually landed on the ground? Can they kind of like shuffle and get back in because maybe their feet never touched? So we were having fun the rest of the evening with that particular incident. I do like him though.
Thinking about like guys, if they land on one foot and they hop, they say no, both feet have to touch. Both my feet didn't touch, and so like it was stuff like that I was thinking when it was going on.
Yeah, and it became a little too. And I don't want it to go. That gets too. That it starts to get into the ridiculous, and I want my disbelief suspended. Yeah. And in that moment, it took me out of that. That would have been one where really what the device is just saying, hey, dude, you know what? I know what we're trying to do here. This isn't working. Let's call it a day for you, and we'll get it next time. Money in the Bank will roll around, and you'll do all kinds of crazy stuff there, just like you normally do.
Yeah. Well, like the last Rumble with him going and doing the catwalk on the outside barrier, and then jumping back and doing those type of just physical stunts that he does. It's kind of neat. So I do give him all credit because he is fun to watch, and he is fun when he does stuff like that. This kind of stuff happens. It's live TV, and
I want to see him get a push at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
They've done it before with him. They were trying to push him versus Randy Orton back. Last time around when Randy was champion. And I feel they missed an opportunity there with him. because I think Kofi's really, really talented. One of the things I wanted to see out of this Battle Royal, I'm really glad they didn't have Big Show win. And I love Big Show, so it's not even a knock. I think but I think using him as an opportunity to really push somebody like Cesaro or any of the other guys that were in there, like, I'm a Ziggler fan. I would have loved to seen Ziggler win. You talked about The Miz was your favorite to win. I was glad to see, like, somebody get pushed with this, because that should be the point of it. And they really need to do something big with Cesaro, because that'll only add to this match meaning something if you're going to do it every year.
Right.
If somebody really does something with their victory from this.
And let me clarify something for people. Miz and Ziggler were my two favorites going into this. Mm-hmm. And I was, I didn't know Cesaro was in the match.
I didn't either.
Because he had his earlier match. If I had known Cesaro was in the match, I would have put him added him to the mix as a possible, favorite to win. And same thing with you. I'd love the Big Show, but I felt that this would be a good chance to use this event for Big Show to push someone over. And I was thinking Miz, because he would do something sneaky and win. He'd do the Flair, dirtiest player in the game type of thing. Or Ziggler, because he is the show-off, and because he's got that high-fly action, there's that fiery action would pull off the victory. I was thinking that's where my thought process was going. But having, this was a great usage of Cesaro and just the power, showing him cleanly pick up Big Show and cleanly throw him out. Yeah. There was no sneaky, there was no underhanded. That was a clean victory, and I was really excited for that, to see a solid push, and then just what you said about the handshake afterwards. High class, that was definitely something I really enjoyed, and it's you like seeing those moments.
Cena versus Bray Wyatt.
Oh my God. I don't understand the hatred.
You know what? I was just actually go ahead, because I was just going to ask you that. Go for it.
I don't understand the hatred for John Cena. I don't get it. Maybe it's wrestling fans interacting, being part of the show or whatnot, but I don't understand the hatred. This is a guy who just night after night gut check, muscles up, and just puts on the show. He is a fan that's in the ring. He is somebody that I don't see why people hate him. Now, some of the stuff with Bray Wyatt was awesome. When the crowd started singing, he's got the whole world in his hand and he starts leading them.
Yeah.
Those were some great moments. But just in the end, I don't get the hatred towards Cena. I just don't understand it.
I actually love, though, that they haven't broken his character.
Yeah.
I think that part is far more interesting. Like, I'm glad that there's the, let's go Cena sucks chant and all that kind of stuff. I think that works really well. I love Cena. I think he's fantastic. I love that he plays it off, but he won't compromise who he is. And I think that's made him an interesting character. Mm-hmm. So I continue to enjoy watching him just because he flies in the face of that and doesn't. I talked earlier about the traditional thing is to, like for the Shield to split them up. In the case of John Cena, the traditional thing would be then to turn him heel. They didn't do that, and I find that far more interesting than if they did, because it is flying in the face of what you would normally expect. So I think that's brilliant, keeping him face and letting the people just do what they're going to do, but keeping Cena this monster that he's been. I liked that he went over Bray.
Yeah.
And let me clarify that. I think Bray Wyatt is and continues to be being developed as a future, and should be, a future superstar, because I find he's one of those guys that when he's on a card, no matter what the other matches are, I'm interested in his match. I want to see what he's going to do. They took that guy and made him, from his Husky Harris original gimmick. And it's good. I mean, he's somebody who went through a developmental deal into developing Bray Wyatt, and it's been a brilliant gimmick. And it continues to be interesting. I have no issue with them doing another match with the two of them if they do. And, him coming out on top of Cena or them going into a new feud with him. I want to see the Shield versus the Wyatts again in the worst way.
Well, yeah.
Because that feud was brilliant. He's just somebody that's going, and that whole crew, it's just incredibly compelling, and he's awesome on the mic.
Yeah, I gotta say, I just think the wonderful villain, and just again the crazy, quirky stuff, and just that creep factor is absolutely wonderful with him.
Yep.
But throughout that whole match, I kept thinking, what if they turned John Cena monster heel? Could he survive a heel turn? Or would it be the end of Cena? Is it the fact that Cena does keep the clean, does keep who he is what keeps him going? Or could he handle going to the dark side?
Do you want to see it, though?
Yes and no. On one hand, I say yes because I've never seen him as a monster heel, and I think as long as they make him a monster heel, not the smarmy, cowardly heel, but keep him up as just this powerhouse who is just beating the holy heck out of people, I would maybe want to see that. But on the other side, I never really liked Hogan as a heel. For me, the red and yellow, just the Hulkster, that larger than life hero. I always liked about Hogan. That's what I like about John Cena, is the clean cut, is that positive, fighter. Yeah, he's tough and he pushes to the edge, but he's not a heel. He is a face, and I like that part of him. So I don't want to lose that. But on one hand, I'm like, I wonder how he would be as that heel.
We've seen him as a heel before.
See, I never have.
You never saw him when he was the rapper and the heel and did all that beforehand?
Not really.
Okay.
I remember his rapper gimmick, but I don't remember him as really a heel.
That's what he was.
Oh, okay. See, I vaguely remember him as a rapper, and then I remember the ruthless aggression when he came out and called out Kurt Angle and stuff like that. And, I remember those kind of moments, but I don't have any solid memories of saying that, yes, he was this evil heel. I think when I say heel, I mean, I want him to be nasty.
Yeah. I guess to me, here's part of where I'm torn. I think what you paint out there would be interesting, to see him kind of be this vicious, super powerful, only if you have him be dominant. You're right, you can't turn him into a cowardly heel. You got to have him be this, kind of what Lesnar is.
Yeah.
Just this vicious beast. The only catch with that is, I also think that's cliche. The Hogan example that you mentioned, one of the things that worked so well when Hogan turned is, for somebody who was so immensely popular, it almost was like taboo to consider ever turning Hogan a bad guy because it was Hogan. He's as American as apple pie, at that point. That was where that worked so well. But since then, it became so cliche that what you do to make things interesting is you take a good guy, you turn him bad. You take a bad guy, you turn him good. I think what's interesting about the Cena thing is that they're breaking the mold with that. They're doing something that flies in the face of that. And I find that more compelling. I find the fact that he gets viciously booed at some places, and there are other places that are more Cena tolerant.
Yeah.
And I really quite like it. I find it interesting. I think the matches and I like that he plays off it.
Yeah, I think Canada is more Cena tolerant.
Yeah.
But then his hometown of Boston really hates him.
It's crazy.
And I don't get that's one of the ones I'm like, what the heck? And when they were in Cleveland was pretty Cena tolerant.
Yeah.
Cleveland had a nice solid balance of let's go Cena sucks chance. We're evenly keeled. I'm very happy that Cleveland's very Cena tolerant because again, I still don't get it, but and it was funny because at the end of the match, when he gave the hug to that kid who's in the full Cena gear and all that. And you're like, right there's why he doesn't turn heel.
Yep.
Right there's why he doesn't become, he didn't let, Bray Wyatt corrupt him. He stayed John Cena. It was for that little kid. And it so reminded me of the Hulkster. I get one of the reasons why I really like Cena is because I am such a Hulkamaniac. And seeing, what to me should be the current version of Hulkamania running wild. And I'm like, come on, everybody cheer for him. It's Cena,
I like that the kids are into him.
Yeah.
Because I think, he is, and you know what, going back to the Hall of Fame speech, I loved that the Warrior acknowledged Cena's work for Make-A-Wish. And the way that he did it, just talking about, more than any other athlete, John Cena's out there doing it. I know he doesn't want people to know that. I know you're a warrior, Mark, and I just want to tell you, I thought it was cool that he was acknowledging that I know you've been a fan of me, and I just want to tell you, based on what I know about you, I'm a fan of you and your charity work. I just thought that was really cool. I don't know how you could watch that and see that that's really the truth about Cena. He does those things and is well known for doing those things for kids and not get behind the guy. I don't get it. Like, to me, that if I was a Cena hater, that would make me change my mind. And I was already a fan of him, but I just thought that like wink and a nod. Warrior didn't do it for that reason. Warrior just did it to just say, I want to tell you something about it. There's a guy in this audience I respect. I thought that was classy because he could have made it all about him, and he wasn't. He gave a nod to Triple H, for putting the whole thing together. He kept calling him Paul, and I thought that was kind of cool. There's little things that he was doing out there. I thought that was really classy what Warrior did. That just meant a lot. I just thought that was kind of neat, to acknowledge that, because we watch this for the entertainment factor, for the storylines, and obviously that type of thing. It's very comic book, so for us, there's a definite, the link between wrestling and comics is very strong in the type of storytelling that's being done on a serialized level there, duh. But off screen, to see that, there's people in that company that are doing things. Make-A-Wish, to me, I just think is a wonderful foundation, and to hear how many of those Cena fulfills. I don't care what other people say, about him, if they think he's boring or something like that. I find the whole way they're handling Cena very compelling, and I find that I have nothing but the utmost respect for him. And the way that you mentioned with Hogan, because the way he is now is the way that I viewed Hogan as a kid. So and the Warrior, honestly, they were kind of your tried and true blue guys. Like, I never wanted to see the Warrior turn heel. I mean, he's one of those guys I didn't want to see either. And Cena's the same way. The Hogan comparison that you have is very, very valid. Hogan, Cena, Warrior, those are guys that I never really wanted to see turn heel. Hogan worked. It did work. But you don't want to turn that type of thing cliche. It worked because it was a one-time thing you could get away with on that level. You'll never be able to do that and swerve people again. If you turn Cena heel, it wouldn't have the same impact. It just wouldn't.
Yeah. Well, the only way they could turn Cena heel and have an impact would be if he double-crossed Daniel Bryan.
I don't think even that would work now, though. I mean, would you find that shocking now? Like, on the level that Hogan was. Remember when that happened, dude?
Yeah, see, no.
No, it wouldn't be that.
That Hogan's turn was... I still remember, and I wasn't a big WCW fan.
I was.
At the time. So I didn't see it actually live happen. I heard about it, and then had to, see a video of it and watch it and read it. I'm like, what? They can't turn, and I was like, but I had to seek it out and I had to find it. And I think that's part of the reason why I wasn't a big fan of the Hogan turn, because I wasn't a big fan of WCW. And, and I wasn't really watching it that hardcore, even though Hulkster was over there.
He wasn't working over there. I mean, it just didn't. The Hogan gimmick bringing over there, was not working. It not on the level that you would expect it to be. So they really needed to take a risk and do something crazy opportunity wise, and that was brilliant. My favorite wrestler of all time is Sting, and I'm going back to buzz cut, blonde haired, very much like the Ultimate Warrior kind of Sting. And I mean, and I'm not trying to. They're two very different characters. But, the face paint and, that type of gimmick. The intensity, because Sting had his own unique intensity. I was a huge Sting fan. Still am. But that whole swerve when Scott Hall and Kevin Nash came in, because I was a big Razor Ramon fan. So then Scott Hall's coming over, and those guys really, they created something very interesting over there. And at the time, this is why it can't be duplicated. Two huge guys from the WWF come over. They come over, and then Hogan, and I'm going to call it WWF because I agree with the Warrior. I thought that was brilliant, too, when he did that in the speech. Because that's what it was at the time. And Hogan coming out, and I remember at that moment, we were sitting over at my buddy Jimmy's house, and we were talking about, what if it was Hogan? What if Hogan turns? And it was one of those things you said, but you didn't really believe. Then he drops the leg, and it was like, oh my God, what just happened? Actually, this is an appropriate segue into another oh my God moment. Undertaker Lesnar.
Oh, wow.
Because I did not, they really swerved me. And here's where they swerved me. They did the traditional Brock Lesnar one-upping The Undertaker at the most recent, Raw. That's one where you talk about cliche. The cliche is the bad guy gets the better of the Taker. We really start to believe that this guy could beat the Taker, but at the end, I guess I didn't
find a way.
Yeah, I guess I didn't see the streak being beaten there. From everything that I've read afterwards and how beat up the Undertaker got during this, I'm a huge Undertaker fan, and one thing, I wasn't angry with the ending. Were you?
No, I was shocked.
Shock is
the
a very
shocked
good...
Undertaker guy. Elias MBEH.
Mm-hmm.
Mabey, I believe. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but the guy who is the face of the shocked WWE fan. That's how I was, and very similar expression on his face. I was like, "What?
Yes.
What?" My first thought was, did they make a mistake?
Mm-hmm.
Was he supposed to kick out and he got hurt?
Because the ending was very abrupt.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know how much the behind-the-scenes stuff that I read was accurate, because I was really checking because I saw that reports that he was injured on some level, concussion.
Yeah, massive concussion. It was a pretty bad one.
Right. So I was reading up on what was going on, and I guess, that Brock had to, help get that match going towards the, end to its end game, and that might have led to that abrupt feeling in how it ended. I honestly, wasn't angry because I feel The Undertaker carries a lot of stroke back there. And I think if The Undertaker said, I don't want to drop it, he wouldn't have dropped it.
No.
I think the plan that was done behind the scenes was really to swerve everybody, to give us something that would get us talking afterwards. There's no way with Undertaker and the amount of pull that he's got with that company. If he said, I don't want to drop the streak and because I want to leave an opening to come back next year, possibly, that's what they would have done.
Definitely.
I don't think it really, the comparisons we just made to the Hogan thing, that was more shocking to me than if they turned John Cena heel, because I did not see that coming at all. I thought Taker was good, because Taker put on a great match for the longest time. Lesnar was doing a lot of one-upping him, but then Taker started taking control. And when they were doing the trade-offs of the moves, he was kicking out of multiple F5s, I thought for sure he was going to get up and win.
He kicked out of 2 F5.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy crap, Taker's going to pull this off somehow. And the whole time I'm thinking it's going to be something. That's why when it ended, I was like, what? And I initially thought it was a mistake. Maybe it wasn't supposed to happen. And even Heyman was like, you did it. And Heyman had the shock and Brock had the shock. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I was like, it was shock. I never had anger. It was shock, disbelief, oh my God, I can't believe they did it, because I never thought they were going to drop it to Brock.
Well, they said only 4 to 6 people knew. A lot of the reactions that you were getting around the ring area were genuine. So I would love to know who actually knew. How limited they kept that. Did the announce team know at all?
I don't think they did.
I don't either. I thought it was... and I
listened to how they were talking.
Yeah.
I don't think they knew going into the match how it was going to end.
I thought that was incredibly... Whoever knew, whoever didn't, they sold me. I thought it was compelling. I was shocked. If it was anybody else other than the Taker, I might be mad. But knowing the kind of pull he's got in the back, in the sense that I really feel he's one of those major heavyweights that if he had said he was going to come back and do another year, they would have let him keep the streak. They would have if he said, I want to go out with the streak intact, they would have let him go out with the streak intact.
Yes.
So I'm sure he was a part of that decision. If they were going for shock, they certainly did it, because I did not see that coming. I thought the match itself was really, really brutal and great. I give both of them a lot of credit. I give him a ton of credit, because when I heard what he went through in that match, it's been known for years now, for quite a while, that dude's had multiple surgeries and... just to keep himself going. It's one of the reasons why he's been on such a limited schedule. And for him to keep coming back and delivering those... I didn't care that it was a once-a-year match, because it always delivered. And it was a good, tremendous storytelling. I always looked forward to the Taker WrestleMania match.
Yeah.
So, there was nothing for me to be upset about. I wanted to see him keep the streak from a very personal level, just as far as I wanted to see the streak go out as being undefeated. But I am not angry about it because I thought that they really, from a storytelling standpoint, told a great story in the match and shocked me. I was like, whoa. Yeah. And because of the kicking out of multiple F5s, I don't think they took anything away from him in the defeat. You know what I mean? It was Ric Flair and Michaels, great example. I didn't want to see Ric Flair lose because I wanted them to swerve me the other way with that one, just because of Flair's history. But it was such a tete-a-tete between the two of them that when it finally happened, it was like, okay, I get it. This worked. A tremendous shock value. I still don't, I'm still in awe, and I'm almost, kind of stumbling over it because I'm still kind of speechless from the whole thing. That's great storytelling. There's no two ways about that. That's tremendous storytelling when you get people that swerved on it.
Yeah, I hope they keep the fire going, and this is start of something really cool for Brock with, the current regime, and I want to see him. It's funny because I don't want to see Daniel Bryan drop the belt anytime soon, but I wouldn't mind him dropping it to Brock just to continue the fire going.
Here's the thing, though. What I'd love to see is Brock mow down some other... I'd like to see him against Batista. I'd like to see him mow down some people before going to Daniel Bryan. And I'd like to see Daniel Bryan beat him.
Yeah?
Well, here's what you want. David versus Goliath.
True.
And the only way that's going to work, though, is, first of all, you've done it with The Taker now. You've put Brock Lesnar on a pedestal. If you're smart with this... You've got to, the person that beats him next has got to be somebody where you're like, can he actually do it? Though the thing that you're mentioning, that would make that match interesting, and I don't think you should jump to it.
True. No, I get you. I get what you're saying. And again, I'd like to see Brock Orton.
Yeah.
With Brock beating Orton. Again, I like Randy Orton, but, you need to have guys who, and mentioned with Batista and even John Cena, Brock with Brock beating Cena. And I'm a huge Cena fan, but it's still stuff that just escalate, just continue the fire going about the Beast incarnate. And
if Brock
and Daniel Bryan.
If Brock beat Bryan and gets the belt, I already know my top two choices on who I'd want to see go up against Lesnar to beat him. Either Roman Reigns or Cesaro.
Yeah, agree on both.
Because I think both would deliver a great match with him. Here's the thing, though. Daniel Bryan would deliver a great match with him, too. And those are guys I'd put in Brock Lesnar's path if the end goal is to have Lesnar versus Bryan eventually.
Yeah.
And with Bryan coming out on top. There's so many. I'd love to see Lesnar versus Bray Wyatt. They've got a great card there of people they could put up against Lesnar from this and have Lesnar beat through them. And I wouldn't make it traditionally Lesnar against all good guys. I would put Lesnar against anybody.
Any takers.
Right.
Just anybody who gets in his path.
To build the storyline to the eventual person who's going to take him down. You have to have, if you're going to do this, I'm with you. If you're going to do this and you have to honor the storyline by taking it someplace far. If you cheapen it and do some quick thing, it doesn't work. It's got to be some kind of long build that culminates next year.
Yeah.
Whoever beats him, it's got to be next year at WrestleMania, and it's got to be big. And I can't wait to see who it's going to be, if they're smart enough to do that. And I think they are. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. The other thing they have to do out of this, and I don't know how they're going to do it or pay it off, they've got to do something huge for The Undertaker if that was his last match. You know what I mean? There's got to be some form of coming out and honoring him or something to just... let us know that that's what happened there, because I largely suspect that might be the case. But they've got to do something huge for him, because, and then maybe he's got to be Hall of Fame next year, right?
Oh God, yeah, he better be, because if not, if that was his last match, which it looks like it was his last match. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do one more thing of a farewell, including very easily could do something with an honoring thing, and of course Brock comes out, interrupts it, those two duking it out, and they could use that as the platform for the next fight for Brock, because you get Brock doing a beatdown on Taker, and whoever runs out, that's who's going to be feuding with Brock next. And you have someone like, Cena would be a great person.
You know what?
to
I
run out
don't
there.
want to see that. Here's the thing. At this point, you had Brock beat the Taker. To me, I don't want to see the Taker destroyed on his way out. And I don't feel that match did that. I felt like that was two forces of nature going at it, and one just beat the other. And that was the thing about the ending that I kind of like, actually, because it was such a shock in the way that it came. They were trading off, finishing moves, back and forth. It really was gridlock, and it just happened. It was one of those things that did. I would be less of a fan if he dominated and destroyed the Taker. I don't want to see that, because the Taker as a concept, the Warrior came out and talked about legends. The Taker should go out a legend. The other, do you think that loss takes away the chances of Sting versus Taker next year? Because that's been rumored. Do you think that that's a done issue now because of this? Or would that be the last match?
On one hand, I say yes, because the streak is no more.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, that could be the way they do it, where
Sure.
Taker announces his retirement, and then Sting's music plays, and Sting comes out and says, hold on, one more match. You and me, WrestleMania. And that way, you go into WrestleMania not knowing who is going to be the one to win, because the streak's no longer on the line, and it'll be both of their last matches. So one of them's going to win, one of them's going to lose, and then I don't know how you go with that.
I don't either, but here's the great thing. Without the streak hanging over it, it would be interesting to see.
Yeah, because then you don't want to give, if this is Sting's only match in the company, you don't want to let him break the streak. But the streak's already been broken, so either side could win it. And,
Sure.
Yeah,
Because they both want to go out on top one more match before calling it a day. I'm hoping that I would love to see between the two of them, because I'm a big fan of both. And here's the funny part. Sting is my favorite wrestler of all time. I don't know who I'd vote for in that one, though, because I like both of them so much that I think that would be compelling.
Yeah.
So I would love to see if Taker still got that in him, for the two of them to maybe have that as a sense of closure. I don't know if they're still going to do that, or if they're going to do something else, or if maybe this just drops the whole idea of doing Sting in that capacity. But I would love to see it. But that was just like, the match I felt bad for, the Divas Championship, following up with that, because I don't know how you follow that up. Did you? And I don't know. I guess I was so torn on the placement of that match, because I don't know if it was fair to the Divas to put them there, but I don't know what match you could have put there. Any match was going to take a hit being put in that spot. And I think they were trying to separate that from the main event, where they wanted to have the biggest pop. So I get the point.
Yeah.
I don't know what else I would have put there, because I wouldn't have put John Cena versus Bray Wyatt after that, because that would have really taken away from that match. I just feel bad that it took away from the Divas, because I think it did take away from the Divas match. Did it for you?
Yeah, it did. And it was one of those things where I think I was glad to see they let all the Divas in on it, and everyone, so they all could actually compete at WrestleMania. So that was wonderful for them to do it, because the women's division, I wish would get a little bit more respect than what it's getting, because I'm seeing some really cool wrestling coming out of it. And that was something that, for me, on any female division in wrestling that I watched, I always liked the ones who could actually wrestle, the ones who could actually, in theory, keep up with the guys, and who could throw down. That's why people like Trish and Lita were always, some of my more, in China, were some of my favorite, female wrestlers, because they could go and they could throw down. And we're getting a lot current divas who can actually wrestle, and we're seeing the ones who were fluff pieces before are becoming solid wrestlers. And I was like, man, they could really do something cool here, but because of the sheer volume of people, they had to go back and forth. And I did like how they handled it, where there was central action in the ring, people would get thrown out and they'd be out and they'd jump back in, and so they kept some controlled chaos. But and I was happy with the ending, because again, you keep stacking everything against her, and she keeps finding a way to win. So, I was happy with that ending.
Well.
Yeah.
Did you see Raw?
I have not seen all of Raw, so yeah.
I would recommend watching NXT Arrival before watching Raw.
Okay.
Because you'll have a better understanding of what happened on Raw. I'll leave it at that. I won't spoil. I obviously I spoiled slightly for you. You won't quite understand what happened if you haven't seen NXT Arrival.
Oh, okay.
But I thought that ending was brilliant. I actually really liked during the match what happened with the Bellas.
Yeah.
How they kind of went up against each other. Kind of teasing, hey, this is for the women's championship. I kind of wondered why one of them didn't take a dive for the other, because they had an opportunity in there in one moment where they could have pinned and walked out with the title.
Yeah, I personally, I would have ended, I like the ending, but I probably would have ended it with a double pinfall where two different divas at the same time get the 1, 2, 3.
You know why I didn't want that? Here's one of the things I really I liked about WrestleMania 30. There was no cheap win. Like, what I mean is they all had an ending, a definitive ending.
Yeah, true.
It's almost become, I know I'm using the word cliche a lot, but it has in wrestling that, like I'll use a great example. Impact. TNA. I'm a fan of TNA. You and I used to get the weekly TNA pay-per-views when it first started, where it was the weekly program was actually only on pay-per-view, and every week was one of those. I'm a big fan. But one of the things that they overdo is their main events always have this like insane amount of overdone swerve, and there's never a clean ending. This pay-per-view, even though there was shenanigans going on, there were endings, definitive clean endings. Like AJ coming in when she did, that was a clean ending. I mean, there's nobody helped her do that. She went in there and just did it. I loved that ending. I loved it. Flew in the face of Vicky and got her all upset, and I thought it was great. And I loved the ending of the whole thing. And yet at the same time, they were spotlighting a lot of the female talent that they have there that's really good. Here's where I thought the match suffered. It took me a little bit to get into the match because of where I was still at from the previous match.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of talent in that women's division. And I feel like it gets shortchanged a lot because you and I are big fans of that era with Trish and Lita and stuff like that. And I think that there were storylines going on there that were every bit. She mentioned in the speech, I think it was Trish who mentioned it, the fact that they headlined Raw and had that huge match. I remember that. And I just remember like how that was... It was every bit as good as the males match, that you would normally have at the end of the program. I think there's people in this Divas division now that could do that kind of match that could carry the main event of the show. Their storylines need to match what's going on with the guys.
Well, the first Divas cage match and that hardcore match between Trish and, what's her name? I'm drawing a blank now.
I don't know which hardcore match you're talking about.
She had the cage match with.
Oh, Victoria?
Yeah, thank you. She and Trish had a hardcore match at a street fight. And I still remember that fight between the two of them because the way they actually handled it, it was like, a regular street fight, where they're going through and they're improvising. Like, hey, let me take this trash can and throw her into the trash can. Oh, kendo stick, bam! And there was some really cool, that was a really nice, hardcore match. I was like, that was kind of stuff that I really enjoyed from that era of the Divas division.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally forgot about that match until you started describing it. I'm like, oh, yeah, wait, I do remember that. That was good. That's what I mean. The Divas division, I think, takes a back seat sometimes. I was glad to see this match where, I guess that's where I liked the match placement, but I feel like, I don't know how you follow up that shock. It was a good move, though, because if you're looking at the overall pacing of the pay-per-view, you go from that match into Randy Orton versus Batista versus Daniel Bryan. We knew that Daniel Bryan was already hurt. And on top of that, they do this storytelling in there where it was Randy Orton going up against Batista, and Daniel Bryan was taking advantage of that and was really, bringing it on. But then Triple H came out and Stephanie and Randy Orton and Batista were like doing horrible things to Daniel Bryan. I figured like the dude's going to get screwed. It's just not going to work out. They're going to beat him down so much that he wasn't going to. And I kept rallying for him. I mean, I thought that was really the compelling storytelling in it is. It's like, get up, get in there. Show, you got to win this because nothing else is. And there came a point in the match where nothing else would have worked but having Daniel Bryan win. Yeah. If you did anything else, you would have ruined the pay-per-view. It was for all of the people that were involved in that triple threat match, they told a story that needed to be told, paid it out, in the way. I thought Batista tapping, I thought that was really cool that he did that, because he and Orton and Triple H, the way that the match played out, I don't think anybody lost out on that match, and looked bad. It wound up being just a great ending to the match, and I don't know how else you would have done it.
Now, here, actually, because I was thinking about this, and I agree with you. I loved the ending. I loved how Daniel just kept overcoming, and that for me was just what I wanted the ending for WrestleMania to be. What we got is what I wanted. When I saw them do the whole maneuver and he's getting carried out in a stretcher, I'm like, oh, he's getting off that stretcher and he's running back down. I knew that was coming. I was pumped when it happened and just all the stuff. But would it have taken anything away if anybody would have run down to help Daniel?
Yes.
Even if they come down to beat up Triple H, or they come down, that and not,
Yes. Here's the reason why. The end result was so satisfying because Davey beat that huge Goliath that was put in front of him by himself. There's nobody else we can... there was parts of me that was thinking, oh, it'd be so great if CM Punk comes out right now, because there was a point in time where fans were cheering for him.
Yeah.
Because, you kind of want to see him again. You hope that eventually gets whatever the mess is there, it gets worked out. I'm glad it didn't happen. Not because I dislike CM Punk or anybody else. Let's go with what you're saying. Anybody. The end was so much more satisfying because we saw him get off the stretcher. We saw him overcome. We saw him use the skills that he did. That exploding knee to the face of Batista into using his move, getting Batista to tap, the yes lock. I don't know. Just the ending was so perfect because it was him overcoming. And you build this guy to having this connection with the fans. You talk about your Hogan experience. What was great about the Hogan experience was, when he went up against an Andre the Giant, there wasn't somebody running down to take out Bobby Heenan to get them out of the way. Hulk Hogan hulked up, and the fans brought that energy to Hulk that kept him going. Bryan has that quality. When the fans start going, yes, 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 and you see this guy, start doing his shaking that he does. I don't know. It has those moments. The Warrior has those moments as well, where it's, you kind of get pulled up behind that. It's funny with, for a little guy, Bryan pulls that out in such a way. And that exploding knee is so convincing. It looks so devastating no matter how big a guy is. You can see the speed and the velocity.
Yeah.
It's very believable. His moves are very fast, very quick, very intense. It's the difference between, I know the whole size thing is what's worked, but why did Shawn Michaels get over? Because there was an intensity to what Shawn Michaels delivered. Bret Hart, why did that work? Intensity. I think Bryan, it's poetic that Bryan has such a connection to Shawn Michaels through his training, because I see a lot of what stood out with Shawn Michaels in Daniel Bryan. And if they ignore that and don't understand that that's, what people are connecting with, they're missing a huge, huge point there. You believe Bryan can win because of the intensity, the explosion of the moves that he does. That knee is devastating. That knee looks like it knocks your head into next week, the way that's delivered.
And I agree completely with you. And that's why I enjoyed the ending. And that's why when I was thinking of how this WrestleMania would end, that stuff is all going through my head. But it was one of those after the fact stuff where you just sit and think about stuff. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I thought of that I think would have been kind of neat, but the fact that they didn't do it, I'm not upset by or even remotely, whatnot. But I thought it would have been a neat thing to do is while the Triple H beatdown, you have Shawn Michaels run down. And initially you figure, okay, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, another Daniel Bryan screw job. And you have Shawn Michaels go, no, stop. Get hey, dude, you've done enough to this kid. Back off. And you actually have Michaels, do another face turn and have those two just him stop, and then even switch in music to Triple H to stop Triple H from the continued beatdown of an already beaten down Daniel Bryan.
But here's the reason why I wouldn't have wanted any of that. Everything that you're mentioning right now would have taken away from Daniel Bryan. Now, all of a sudden, instead of being totally captivated by Daniel Bryan, we're captivated by Shawn Michaels because we feel that Daniel Bryan can't carry the match enough to get people excited. We didn't need any of that. I so totally did not want to see anybody else get credit for what happened to Daniel Bryan. I did not want to see it being, oh, and Daniel Bryan won because Shawn Michaels came out and Monday on Raw. Now you're not going to have Shawn Michaels here, so he's not in the building. Now I'm going to beat you. It takes away from when he came out on Raw and he had the belts. There was something so satisfying knowing that he won. It's a story that needed an ending. And it needed an ending when you look back at SummerSlam when Daniel Bryan beat Cena. Daniel Bryan beat Cena clean. And he was screwed afterwards. He didn't need help to beat Cena. He beat Cena. The feeling was after that like maybe he couldn't carry a pay-per-view or something like that. So ridiculous. Because, his matches are ones that draw me. He and Punk had that quality, about them. And there's a lot of guys on the roster that have that quality. But, there's pay-per-views that specifically I watched because I wanted to see what was going on in the Daniel Bryan match. The Wyatt storyline with Bryan that was going on at the beginning of this year was so compelling because it was Daniel Bryan, and we wanted to see him overcome. I mean, that was a raw moment when he was up there in the top of the cage and finally had turned on Bray Wyatt. And that whole swerve afterwards was great. They could have extended that out too far. They pulled it at the right time. And I think that led to the excitement to see him eventually win the title. Those type of things. I honestly, I know what you're saying, and the story you're crafting isn't a bad one. I like it. I just think it would have diminished what Bryan did to have anybody involved in that because the focus would have been somewhat on them.
I agree.
When it was all bad guys, it didn't do that.
Oh, no, I agree with you. These are things that after the fact I always start thinking of, what about this? What about that? What about this? And there's just, I think it's one of those things that it's part of the thing I enjoy about wrestling is the fact that I do these what about this? So what if this was thing, or how would if I was the booker, how would I have changed this match, or how would I have changed the pay-per-view or the lead up to it, etc., and stuff like that. I think that's something that we all as wrestling fans do, where it's part of the fun of wrestling is thinking beyond just what I just saw.
Yeah, it's oof. I don't know. I look over that pay-per-view and I look over the card. Is there anything that I'd change? No. And I know the Undertaker thing is one of those where that would be, him keeping the streak alive would be the one maybe caveat to that. But I don't feel that took anything away from me to an amazing pay-per-view for the 30th WrestleMania. One distinction it will always have is that where the streak ended. And the match, for somebody historically looking back and watching that, because you can do that on the network now, the match was awesome.
Yeah, see, with me, the only thing I could come up with a change now is that opening moments with Hogan, Stone Cold, and The Rock. Those were wonderful moments. Those are WrestleMania moments. And I'm not going to say they should pull that out, but if they were to pull that out, they could have put another match in its place.
Oh, see, and I'm going to go ahead and say with what you're going to say, but I'm going to completely disagree with this.
And again, I'm not saying it was bad. I thought it was wonderful. I was cheering the whole time that was going on. That was a WrestleMania 30 WrestleMania moment. I completely agree with why they put it in there. But if I had to say change one thing in the pay-per-view, the only thing I could think of is throw a match in there. And
what match?
Well, I would have done. I would have pulled Big E from the Andre tournament and had an Intercontinental title match.
I would have put it in. Here's one thing. I'll agree with you that I would have loved to see an Intercontinental title match. But we had those 2 hours leading up to this. That would have been a great spot for that.
Yeah.
I would never in a million years have pulled that Hogan. I wouldn't have taken away any match that was there. I would have never pulled that Hogan Rock Stone Cold moment because it was the 30th. And having Hogan come out and do the introduction and that whole bit with the, Silver Dome versus Superdome. Here's what made that. Austin leaning in the corner laughing at the whole thing. And the fact that he and The Rock kept playing off of that. And here was the beauty of it. Hogan played it off very well. These were three guys that can turn a crowd in an instant and not lose a beat. The history that those three brought, the only thing I would have changed with that is they should have had the Warrior out there too.
Oh God, that would have been
just because if you're bringing the Giants that are still with the company on some level into there, I don't know how he would have interplayed off of them or what the relationship was like to somehow make that work. I would have loved to see him some level a part of that moment. just because. And I don't know that it would have worked because The Rock coming out and doing his speech about how he'd been in the ring with both of those two guys kind of made the whole thing work. There was an energy there that just seemed compelling, with Hogan giving the nod to Steve Austin on what he brought to the table, which was something we've never seen before, on that level. There was something about the winks and nod to everybody, but I felt like one of the things that came out of the weekend for me was how the Warrior needed to be in that category of, just big icons, and I would have loved to have seen him come down. But that is a minor thing to me, other than the fact that I felt like, he's that big that he could have been a part of that exchange. But I don't know that the three of them, I think Austin and The Rock just laughing at Hogan during those votes were so great. And I don't know that would have worked out the same way if the Warrior had been out there.
Yeah, see, I agree with you. That would have been neat if they, if all of a sudden his music starts playing and, that would have been a cool moment. That would have been a WrestleMania moment. But those three in the ring, as I said, I was cheering the entire time. So it's the old, if you got a gun to your head and you got to pick something to change. That's the only reason why I would say it. Otherwise, it's a great, WrestleMania 30 WrestleMania moment.
My gun to the head would have been the Warrior coming out during that moment.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't have changed that moment. I would have brought if we're going to do, you got to make a change. If we're going off of what you're saying, then mine would be I would have had the Warrior out there, because I would have liked to have seen how he played off of those three. Because I think he was doing such a good job on the mic at the Hall of Fame the next night on Raw that it would have been interesting to see. And I say that with the caveat of I don't know that it would have worked as well, but kind of what you were saying with your Intercontinental match, how that being your thing that you would have thrown on if you could. I honestly would have liked to see when they had the multiple hours, I would have tacked on another match. I wouldn't have taken away the segment we're mentioning.
Normally
I would have started with the Intercontinental match.
Yeah, normally they have the lead-in show where they have one match. And then this one, they had that wonderful tag match. They should have, because it's WrestleMania, had two matches.
Sure.
And for me, Big E Langston versus Adrian Sandow for Intercontinental.
Damian Sandow.
What did I say?
Adrian.
Sorry.
Yeah, but
you can tell I'm starting to get tired.
That's okay. I would have loved to have seen that. I would have loved to see a U.S. title match as well.
Yes, just because he doesn't defend it. I like the fact they bring that up.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have taken him out of the 6-man tag to do that. I would have specifically started with one of those matches, too. Yeah. Honestly, they had enough programming there. They could have done both and just extended the day and had those titles showcased earlier.
See, I liked the placement of that match. After the Daniel Bryan Triple H match, I like the fact that it was after that.
That's why I said I would have put if we were doing a U.S. title match, I would have put it really early, meaning it would have been in one of the opening hours, and still kept that Shield domination where it was, because you know what, it didn't need to be. It shouldn't have been anything more than it was. At that moment, you needed to remind us that these are the guys that did this as heels. So why wouldn't they do it as faces? I thought that was brilliant. Oh my gosh, was that so good?
It only makes sense that match went the way it is. And again, I loved, New Age Outlaws. I still do. I think it's it's a great gimmick and great wrestlers, but in reality, they shouldn't have been able to keep up with those guys. And Kane was a factor in the team, but he still was a 3-on-1. It shouldn't have been, the way it ended is the way it should have ended. And I love the fact that it was just a domination.
I didn't expect it to go that way, though. I expected it to be a different sort of match than it was, and it was so perfect. And I give all the people involved credit. See, I don't know. One of the things I thought that was great about the pay-per-view is everyone played their roles well. And it was a great energy of, hey, this is booked to go a certain way. And overall, it all played out really well. The one uncomfortable moment was the Undertaker thing, and I don't know that this might be unpopular. I don't know that I would have changed it just because it was like I wouldn't have wanted him to lose a match that I thought he was going to lose. I would have wanted the drama. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It was you walked into that was a must-see match. And it wasn't one of those where I'm like, I want to see this, but I know the Taker's going to lose. I thought the Taker was going to win. And I thought the match delivered a match that made me believe throughout the match that he could still win. The fact that he didn't was a true and legitimate shock. I don't know if he's going to lose. I think he deserves that. Something that just is shocking and different and just makes you go, we're never going to stop talking about that match.
No.
I mean, that's going to be one of those. Do you remember when Taker lost to Lesnar and none of us saw it coming? I mean, that's what that was. That's where it's a powerful match. I mean, it was a great. It's hard to do that nowadays. We always know what's coming. I didn't know that was coming.
No. And future matches, when you have those shocking moments, it's going to be called a Taker Lesnar. Mm-hmm. You know, that's going to be the comparison. Or if it was a shocking thing, people say, well, it was no Taker Lesnar, but it still was shocking. Or just like, you know, you're going to have that comparison to that moment.
Yeah.
That's the new term for swerve and for shock in a match.
I was with two guys who like me and like you have watched a lot of this stuff over the years. And, you know, there comes a point where you watch so much of it that you can predict certain things, you know, and I love it when it wasn't a cheap swerve. That was a dramatic swerve. You know, I didn't see it coming. It was done in a way that I've never seen before. The two of them, I guess, probably had to do some form of improvisation during all that because of the injuries the Taker was suffering during it.
Yeah.
I give the guy a lot of credit because he's well known. I'm going to say it again. He's been well known to have a lot of injuries that he's continued to work through over the years, have surgeries for, to make and do these matches to try and just keep, you know, the whole Undertaker thing going. And he's done it so successfully, given us some just hoorah moments throughout the years that it was really great to see him go out. I felt he went out on a high note. I mean, I thought that match was a great match, considering everything we know behind the scenes about what the guy went through during it. And knowing that, you know, he would have been part of the decision-making process of making that choice. That wouldn't have been thrust upon him. He would have been a part of making that drama happen. It worked. It did. Because we're never going to stop talking about it. And I think if he'd won, I don't know if we would be saying it the same way.
Yeah, if he had won, it just would have been another victory. This is seriously making this a very memorable, you know, moment. Granted, if you would have, you know, done the final win, kick out, final tombstone, it would have been, oh wow, that was cool. But I think it's more talked about because the streak broke, and you know, and
it wouldn't have been Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker.
Yeah,
you've had those matches already where Taker won those, and they were just like, oh my gosh. Honestly, the Shawn Michaels, the two matches with him and The Undertaker were the highlights, I think, of the whole series all the way through. And then when you have The Undertaker, and that's not taking anything away from the Triple H matches with him, but there's something to be said for the way this one went. I don't think it would have been the classic that those were if it didn't go this way.
Right.
That's where I think it will be talked about. Do you remember that? Oh, it's one of those rare moments that where you just kind of go, because the whole place went silent. People were leaving because they were angry. I mean,
you know what? And that was the thing with, because you and I talked about the fact because I do get up so early for work. I've had a couple pay-per-views where I don't watch the final match, and you know, I just go to bed, and the next day when I get home I watch it because I record them all and watch them later. With that pay-per-view, I was not leaving my seat. I was like, oh my God, and I just had to see what came next, and just I was in for the long haul. And the next day at work was a very rough day at work.
But worth it.
Worth it. Oh God, yeah. Completely.
Yeah, it was just amazing.
Yeah, I want to go to WrestleMania Live. I've never really you and I have done, you know, some WWE pay-per-views. We had the Survivor Series when it was in Cleveland, but part of me wants to go to a WrestleMania, you know, and just travel and go, you know, do the whole experience, you know, the access, and just do the whole package.
You know what? It's funny. That's an example of where the network has. I've always wanted to go to a WrestleMania, but the main thing that's made me say I haven't wanted to do it is I've liked the camaraderie of doing the pay-per-views with friends. So when we do WrestleMania, like we did a WrestleMania party at my house, and we weren't. It's just so people know here, I wasn't excluding Jim. Yeah. I invited you. You just because of your aforementioned, you know, job and worrying, you weren't sure if you were going to finish even watching it. Coming over here to do the pay-per-view, was a no-go. But, having friends over and doing a party at my house, because we usually do this over Jimmy Braddock's, our buddies, it was fun. I mean, we just had a really great time doing the party here and watching the whole event. The guys came over for the first 2 hours, and, we kind of got settled in, which is the great thing about those initial 2 hours. So for as much as I say adding more matches onto that would have been good, for some reason they allowed the opportunity to get settled. And I do feel that tag match was crafted in such a way that it kind of led you into getting ready for the whole pay-per-view, because it built nicely into the Daniel Bryan Triple H match. So the booking on that was solid. So I don't know what I would have changed, but going back to what I was saying about the network, the build-up to all this where we saw people on that WrestleMania Today show going to that access just made me really excited. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, and again, same thing for me. It was because I didn't watch all of those shows, but I watched enough of them. I'm like, man, that does look kind of cool. And just you see the live crowd, and you just get that. You remember what it was like when you actually went to the one live show, and you just imagine, and that's got to be awesome. It's WrestleMania, and it because. When our Survivor Series where we went to with we got the seats because we were in the front row there, and it was kind of neat because it's actually the chair that I record on. Whenever we record, I sit on that chair because my other chairs that I have squeak. When I talk, my hands are flailing, my body moves, and if I'm in a normal chair, it squeaks. Well, this is a folding chair, and it's solid built, so it doesn't squeak or creak or whatnot. So I always record sitting in this chair, and it's so for me, there's always that connection. But I remember how awesome those live events were, and I'm just thinking, man, WrestleMania would have to be awesome. Would have to just take that. Turn it to 11, and I just, I want to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
It was, that would be awesome to kind of do that at some point. So that's on my short list too.
It's on my bucket list now, and I don't know when I'm going to do it, but I think there's definitely going to be a time when, I'll say, okay, look for the sensei, I'm in this section.
Yeah.
Now I can get out of here.
This was terrible.
Wait, you practiced a Hogan impersonation?
Yes.
But how long? You said you used to have a great Hogan impersonation. When did you do like a Hogan impersonation? Because I've never seen this.
I've never done my Hogan for you?
No.
Oh, man, I used to. Back when we had even the Fantasy Wrestling League, I could still do Hogan.
But you never came over and did Hogan.
Well, it never fit the storylines. That's why
That's like your fantasy storylines. I forgot about that.
I had the fantasy storylines. I had that moment where when Team Canada was so big, and I was in the Team Canada mode, and I came in singing the Canadian national anthem.
Okay, yeah, I remember that.
You remember that? Yeah.
But you didn't do it as Hogan.
No, I didn't because Hogan wouldn't have fit.
Okay. So what was your Hogan?
You can't just throw it out there. It has to fit the storyline.
What was your Hogan spoiler going to sound like?
I'm not going to do it because you're recording me right now.
I'm not recording. I would never do that.
Dude, come on. I'm not an idiot. I've known you long enough.
But, you seriously, how often would you do a Hogan? I am fascinated by this, actually, because I did not know this.
Just, sometimes if talking with people about wrestling or something like that, it would just come out. Mm-hmm. I would, I don't know. High school, definitely, I used to do Hogan all the time.
But see, I knew you in high school. I don't remember you doing Hogan.
But we didn't really talk wrestling in high school, did we?
No, good point. We didn't. Well, did you ever go over to Bill's, when we watched the pay-per-views and stuff like that?
Yeah, a couple times.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's funny that, you had this, Hogan...
Yeah, I had a spot on Hogan that I used to be able to do. And
well, without doing it, what would lead you into it? Was it situational?
A wrestling conversation. Okay. A wrestling conversation talking about Hulkster, or if I was talking with people who knew wrestling and wouldn't recognize the Hogan.
How long would you stay in the Hogan? Was it a short thing or was it?
It was a short. It would be a short thing, Okay. If the Army stuff, talking with guys there about working out. I'd kick into the full, say your prayers, eat your vitamins. Work hard, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, brother. Let me tell you something, brother. And you just go into that. And sometimes all you need to do is just say, let me tell you something, brother. And people would chuckle.
Did you ever do it at times that we don't normally hear Hulk doing Hulk? Like, did you ever, like, you were talking about, like, breakfast cereal or something like that? Let me tell you something, Mother.
Like that. Literally, it was like, just if I was hanging out with like-minded people, or someone would mention Hulkster, or somehow, wrestling, professional wrestling got brought up. It'd be, a lot of times it'd be a couple one-liners. It wouldn't be anything. It wouldn't be a lengthy speech. But there would be periodically I'd throw it out there.
Here's where I'm fascinated by this. We do a podcast where you regularly sing.
Yes.
Right? And, I mean, sing badly. But it's become like a gimmick of yours that works really well. I mean, like, because you break into it at, like, crazy times. But we found your line is you refuse to do less than stellar Hogan.
I won't disrespect the Hulkster, man. There's a line. I don't disrespect the Hulkster.
This is one of the reasons why 386 shows in, I could never stop recording with you. You endlessly fascinate me. I just love that.
Hey, what you gonna do?
I got little pieces of it in this. We are proud members, as I mentioned, of various podcast communities, but one of my favorite is our Facebook group. And we're sharing that now with DC Infinite, and we just got an amazing influx of people who have been joining. If you're looking for a great Facebook group to talk about DC Comics and pop culture in general, people share blogs and podcasts that they're doing there. It's a great networking connection with like-minded fans who really are just talking about things that they love throughout pop culture. Please make sure to join our Facebook group. It's just a wonderful community of people, and thank you to all the amazing people that are a part of it. We have a show Facebook page. Our RagingBullets.com website's back up. It was down for a couple of days because we moved it to a new server. I actually moved it to a different hosting account, and it's all back up and running. So if you saw it down for a couple of days, the show website is back up. RagingBullets.com is where we give you news on what's going on with the podcast. Anytime Jim and I come up with ideas on things we're going to be doing for our episodes, I try to post them up there so you know ahead of time where the podcast is going. That feeds into our Twitter account, which also feeds into our Raging Bullets Facebook page, which is separate from the discussion group. We have a Google Plus page. Jim and I both have personal Facebook pages. We love connecting with you and love having you a part of the show. Speaking of that, show voicemails will be back on our next episode, which is we're going to be recording it over the weekend. Our show voicemail line is 1-440-388-4434. Or Dr. Norge on Skype. And actually, I want to make a quick shout out to our contest that we had for our last episode. I will be contacting the contest winners this week. We basically had 4 entries, and we are giving prizes to all 4 of our entrants. So I'll be getting contact to you this week. Feel free to shoot me an email too if you haven't heard from me. And I want to get what trade paperback you'd like from InStockTrades.com, and I want to get your address information so we can get that going. But those were enjoyable entries, yes. So thank you very much for being a part of that episode. And on that note, we will see everyone not quite next week, a little bit sooner than that, with we're going to be talking about Batman and Aquaman. We're adding on the new creative team for Detective Comics. We're also going to talk Wonder Woman and Green Arrow. So it's a very packed episode that's coming this weekend. We will see you then.
Bye.
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Faded for love and applause and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman. The villains are closing in. Be they Thanon guard or Egyptian, working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier if you would just call for back. by Hawkman.